I'm Gary Bard, your host and editor-in-chief of today's Caregiver magazine. Today's Caregiver magazine's Caregiver VodCast will contain insightful expert and community interviews, an author's corner highlighting the best and brightest books about family caregiving, timely and relevant information, and up-to-the-minute news. Also included are special moments from the Fearless Caregiver conferences and other live events. Today's episode highlights one of the Fearless Caregiver conference's most important missions, which is to bring together family caregivers with leading national and local experts for a day of shared wisdom, advice, support, and hey, maybe even a bit of humor thrown into the mix.
I believe that all caregiving is national in implication. What's going on in DC, how it drills down to us on a state level, even a local level, is extraordinarily important, but it's local in application. Along those lines, it's an honor and a blessing to be able to present our keynote luncheon speaker from the ACL and the Secretary of Aging's office, Joseph Lugo.
Now, for me personally, when I start to kind of feel myself drift a bit, there's a writer that I'll turn to, and it's a gentleman named C.S. Lewis. And he's wrote a couple of books that turned into movies. And so he wrote about that when a ship is at high seas, there's three important questions that that ship has to answer. And the first question is, how do we keep from sinking? The second question is, how do we keep from bumping into other ships? And then the third question, and the most important of the three, is why are we even out here in the first place? And so when I came across that quote, I really think it applies to us as caregivers. So overall, across all types of caregiving situations, if you put them all together, put them into one bucket, what you would have is, on average, family caregivers will spend 25 hours per week providing care. So that's like adopting pretty an intense part-time job on top of your regular day activities. Now, if you live with the person you're caring for, this average jumps to 40.5 hours per week. So this is like adopting an intense full-time job on top of your everyday activities. Now, if you find yourself caring for a spouse or partner, you will spend, on average, it goes even higher, 45 hours per week. So it's not only a full-time job, it's a full-time job with overtime opportunities that you weren't asking for. Now, if you are also, and this happens a lot, if you're also caring for a child, you could be providing 75 to 80 hours a week responsibility on top of your everyday activities. So a Inukshuk is a real thing. This is a visible marker that the Inuit people use to communicate, almost as a message center in northern Canada. And what it is they build, they have rocks, and they stack those rocks on top of each other in the shape of a human. And some of you know about this. And so what they do this for is to be able to show other people that despite the conditions, despite the limited resources, people survived here. People stayed afloat, that it's possible to do that. And so my ask of you is for you to try to build your own Inukshuk that'll help remind you what your identity might be. And then put that Inukshuk everywhere. Put it in your home, put it in your car, put it on your smartphone screen, put it on your computer screen, but something that when those waves start crashing, because they come, the financial part, the emotional part, the relationship part, that you remember, though, where your identity comes from. In October of 1995, so I don't want to mess this up, so I'll read it. So this is the Americans first. Please divert your course 15 degrees to the north to avoid a collision. So the Canadians responded, we recommend you divert your course 15 degrees to the south to avoid a collision. And they capitalize your, just to get their attention. So the Americans said, this is the captain of a U.S. Navy ship. I say again, divert your course. And he captained your as well. So the Canadians responded promptly, no, I say again, you divert your course. So I think at this point the Americans had enough. And so this is actually all in caps. This is the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, the second largest ship in the United States Atlantic Fleet. We are accompanied by 3 destroyers, 3 cruisers, and numerous support vessels. I demand that you change your course 15 degrees north. That's 15 degrees north. intense, some sarcasm there, or countermeasures will be undertaken to ensure the safety of this ship. So the Canadians responded, "This is a lighthouse, it's your call." What lighthouses do you have in terms of helping you with your caregiver role? This is a beauty, because what Gary's done is he's brought those lighthouses here so you don't have to go do that. Normally, this does not happen. And so some of that reach is possible because you guys are here. As Gary mentioned, I work for the Administration for Community Living. And so we're a federal agency. We don't claim to have all the answers. We don't have all the answers. In fact, we're actually the smallest operating division within Health and Human Services. Sometimes we say we're a shrub amongst a bunch of redwood trees. But the coolest thing that we have for us is that our mission is actually in our name. We're the Administration for Community Living. And so everything we do is around that concept. And so we're trying to change the way the public accesses human services and make it, you may hear this term a lot, in a more person-centered way, or really put the individual at control. Our new administrator, Lance Robinson, who's just appointed by the president recently, has 5 kind of key pillars. And so as an agency, we're trying to work on how do we align with that current vision, and it's very clear. And so I'll share with you those 5 pillars, because that's what's driving our entire agency right now. And so the first of those, right up front, is supporting families and caregivers. That's one of the pillars that we have. I'm fortunate I serve as a chair of that group. Another one is connecting people to resources. The third is strengthening the network. We're actually trying to figure out how do we build more lighthouses out there. The fourth is employment. And then finally, there's protecting rights and preventing abuse. And so I've been doing this for about 20 plus years, but being in DC, I am really starting to sense the seismic shift going on about recognizing caregivers. I don't know if many of you follow the World Cup. I'm a huge World Cup fan. Yeah. So one of the games, Mexico beat Germany. And literally in Mexico City, the people who search for earthquakes said there was some seismic activities, minor, but occurring when Mexico beat Germany. It's a true story, that really happened. In DC, with caregiving, you can sense the seismic kind of activity starting to really happen around caregiving. And I'll give you a quick example. One of this is the RAISE Act. Okay, just raise the hands. Anybody heard of this by chance? Okay, it's a brand new legislation that was signed or passed in January. This actually was sponsored, really bipartisan. So we had 2 senators, one Republican, one Democrat, who sponsored this, and in the House, one Republican and one Democrat. And the House Democrat was actually from Florida. And it's so rare these days in DC to get them to agree on anything, but they really did agree upon this. But this law directs my boss's boss to come up with a strategy nationally on how do we look at caregiving. So it's a chance to influence research, policy, funding, and awareness. The economic value, if we had to pay for the caregiving that's done nationally, is greater than the sales revenue of Amazon, Google, Facebook, and Apple combined. That is the scale that we're talking about caregiving. Those are like huge global companies. We're part of a global company. The 2004 study said that caregivers frequently reported that caregiving made them feel needed, useful, and good about themselves. Most caregivers also reported that caregiving enabled them to appreciate life more, to develop a more positive attitude towards life, and it strengthened their relationships with others. And this was a study for individuals caring for people with dementia. The American Psychological Association said this is true. There's this 2 kind of factor going on. That yes, there's caregiving stress and emotional distress, but at the same time, there's also this opportunity for growth. He said there's no conflict, they can coexist.
I always have the right answer for any caregiver asking any question on caregiving issues at all. Always. Well, you can't ask me in person. You actually have to write me, email me, mimeograph me, fax me, and I'll ask you one question. I'll say, what's your zip code? And when you give me your zip code, I'll go to the great Google machine in the sky, and I'll find out who the area agency on aging is in your community or your loved one's community, and I'll put you together with him. Because if the area agency on aging, especially the senior helpline folks, if they don't have the answer, they'll find the answer, they'll find the person with the answer, they'll never stop, they'll never give up. They are really your your gateway to support in your community. So I want to tell you that we are extremely proud to be partnered with the Palm Beach Treasure Coast Area Agency on Aging at these events. And more than ever, excited and proud to introduce you to our next speaker, the CEO of the Area Agency on Aging, Palm Beach Treasure Coast, Your Aging Resource Center, which I love, and one of our most important partners for many years, Jaime Estremera Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Gary, so much. And good morning.
Good morning.
I am so glad to see all of you. And let's identify myself right away. Yes, I'm the CEO of your Aging and Disability Resource Center, your Area Agency on Aging. But more importantly, I've been a caregiver for the last 30 years. And that, to me, was the most important thing I could have ever done in my life. I was able to care for my mom, help my dad. My dad was one of those primary type caregivers that spent a lot of years with mom. But mom lived till 99 at home.
Wow.
And it was just wonderful. And you all know the mission of the Area Agency on Aging is to help seniors and caregivers be able to survive and stay at home for as long as possible with independence, with dignity. I saw my mom do that, and I know it works. Secondly, when I moved to Florida from Santa Fe, New Mexico, I brought my dad, because mom had passed away in 2003. And dad, all his life, wanted to come to Florida, but mama would never move because of the hurricanes. I guess she didn't mind earthquakes, but hurricanes she was just afraid of. So dad always used to want. So when I told dad, come and we're gonna go, you're gonna live with me in Florida, he thought, oh, great. Plantains, mangoes, all that kind of stuff. And he enjoyed his life with me and my wife. And by the way, yes, I was caregiver to my dad, but I'm going to tell you, my wife was the real primary caregiver, Robin. And my dad lived with us at home for 8 years. I am such a strong, passionate believer in helping caregivers. And right now, in America, through the help of our federal partner, which is the Administration for Community Living, and our state partners, the Department of Elder Affairs, we are finally, I think, putting the importance of how important caregivers are. Because, you know, I used to tell my doctor, that was my doctor as well as my dad's doctor. And he'd talk to my dad, and he'd tell him things, and he'd give him a prescription, you know, you gotta take this, blah, 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 whatever. And one day I asked him, Doc, let me ask you a question. Who do you count on to make sure dad follows your instructions? And he thought about it, and he said, well, I'm hoping that you and your wife will. I said, that's right. And so many times in the medical profession, we forget that it's great that mom and dad went to the doctor, but what happens at home, and I've told this to health plans, by the way, Medicare Advantage, fee-for-service plans, the most important people, if you're in the business of healthcare, is the caregiver. Because they're the ones that can help to make sure things happen. And I'm glad that in our country, that's really changing. Not only because of conferences like the Fearless Caregiver Conference, but the fact that the medical profession is beginning to really realize that the social determinants of health, all the stuff that happens at home, nutrition, you know, it's great to send dad home from the doctors, but if there's nothing to eat in the refrigerator, that's not very good. So the caregiving is a critical piece in our country. One of the reasons that I love being the CEO of the Area Agency on Aging, your Aging and Disability Resource Center, you heard what I said, your Aging and Disability Resource Center. We are the helpline for 5 counties: Palm Beach, Martin County, St. Lucie, Indian River, and Okeechobee. Anything that has to do with long-term care, whether it's caregiving, whether it's for a senior, whether it's the caregiver, whether it's an adult with disabilities, we are the one place you definitely want to call. And we also are the place to call if you have any Medicare issues or Social Security issues. Not all of the Social Security issues we can't deal with, but we can help you with some of them. And Medicare, definitely. And it doesn't cost you a dime. Your tax dollars at work in your community. But the biggest thing that I love about all that we do, there's so many things we do, but the helpline is the key thing. But here's the thing why I believe in the helpline. First of all, my staff is trained to do one thing, to help you, to listen, to care to move you along. And if you qualify for any kind of public programs, we are the ones that can help you. But we also point you to all the wonderful partners we have of private care. And you can depend on what we tell you. But more importantly, we want to do things. And sometimes we can't meet every need. Unfortunately, I will tell you from an advocacy perspective, because that's one of the big things area agencies on aging do. And my job is to go to Washington sometimes. Sometimes I go to Tallahassee. I'll go to the county. I'll go wherever it takes to advocate for seniors. And I will tell you that in the state of Florida, we have a wait list for many, many services. And I'm working hard for the time that that wait list will disappear, because that shouldn't happen. But it is. But sometimes we can't help people with this thing that they needed, but we can help them with something else. If you're a caregiver, you're going to hear today, you got to take care of yourself. I learned that the hard way. If you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be any good to your person that you're taking care of. It's very key. And that's why caregiving is important, and that's why I also believe in respite care for caregivers.